intermediate term neutral on Bitcoin. Long term, I'm still bullish fundamentally. And the way I would characterize that is, basically in this kind of period of where the Fed is trying to pull back the punch, but where there's less stimulus, where money supply is growing slower than it was, now or than it was over the past couple years. That is somewhat of a headwind for Bitcoin, especially because NYDIG put out a good chart the other day showing that, from 2011 to 2019, Bitcoin didn't have very strong equity, positive equity correlation. Sometimes it was positively correlated, sometimes it was negatively correlated. It was kind of so small that it was its own thing. Now, it tends to like higher liquidity environments, but overall, there wasn't very strong correlation. Ever since 2020, it's had very positive correlation, and I think partially that's because institutions became a big part of the market, and two, because with so much stimulus, almost everything was correlated positively. So anything other than, like, say, cash and gold, most things went up a lot, over the past couple years. And so I think going forward, I think these correlations are somewhat heavy on Bitcoin, but I think that, when you have something that is fundamentally better than something else, eventually that correlation breaks down, and you can start kind of grinding higher. And so, one thing I would point to is that, for example, let's say ARK, for example, as a proxy for unprofitable growth stocks. They peaked in February 2021, and they've had this very weak period. Bitcoin didn't peak in 2021, but it did peak around that springtime. Then it went down quite a bit. Then it had a rally, and actually it very slightly touched new all-time highs. But anyone looking at the chart can see it's been in this consolidation ever since the first quarter of 2021. And so the way I would describe it is that it's separating in terms of magnitude rather than direction. We see over this time that during the 2020 period and going into 2022, so there's not a lot of new demand for Bitcoin. That's basically what's been taken off the market by the lack of stimulus, that the new demand coming in is not as high as it was back in 2020 and then the very early phase of 2021. However, the supply side is interesting because a lot of the weak hands have sold out. A lot of the coins have shifted more towards the illiquid strong hands that have a low propensity to sell. And so a lot of indicators suggest that basically whenever demand does come back into the market, it's kind of like a cold spring. And so that's how I'd phrase it overall, that the conditions are good, but it needs a spark. And so I don't see a spark, anywhere super close right now. So that's why I'm kind of neutral in the intermediate term. I'm just kind of watching the market for catalysts. But I think longer term is still very attractive. I also think that Taproot, it got a lot of attention. The upgrade to Bitcoin in late 2021 got a lot of attention when it happened, and now it's kind of died off. But I think that's going to have very positive implications for the Bitcoin network in terms of technology. I think it greatly improves the Lightning network that I'm bullish on long term. And so I think that basically, while the price is consolidating sideways, all the developers are still working on Bitcoin, building out the rails, building out Bitcoin as both a payment network and an asset. And so I think that's all continuing to grow and get stronger.
What asset are you most constructive on for 2022, and why? It can be a sector, it can be a single stock, it can be an asset class.
So I would say, I think that some of even though the energy area might be overdone in terms of enthusiasm, the pipelines, many of them are still below their price level that they were going into the pandemic. They're less concerned with price and more concerned about volumes. A lot of them yield 6-7% or more. And so even if they go sideways for another year, I think that could do very well compared to the market if the market goes sideways and pays a lower yield. And so I do like some of the higher quality energy pipeline companies. I also still like, some of the healthcare companies, either diversified pharmaceuticals or some of the insurance companies. I think those are reasonably attractive in this environment. One of the catalysts there is that there was a lot of impending regulation that might have suppressed some of their pricing power, and that's kind of in doubt right now based on what's happening in Congress. And then after 2022 midterms, that could be further de-risked. And so the market started to price in kind of a more mild kind of legislation move against them. And now that does not have any legislative move against them. So it remains to be seen. But I think that there are areas like that are pretty attractive.
What asset are you the least constructive on, the most bearish on for 2022?
So I actually do have some of those on my radar for potential bottoming opportunities going forward. So I think my biggest area of concern is probably at least a subset of the mega cap growth stocks.